And also, how much has this percolated to our people at the grassroots level? How are they utilizing data that is given to them? How correct is the data that is given to them? How far has it gone in terms of stimulating activities such as in the agricultural sector, as we had yesterday here in one of the pre-events. Now, to discuss this, despite the fact that we are a bit late in the day, I have a panel here of experts, and I'm going to introduce the experts one after the other as I call them to come to the podium or to use the mobile microphone, if there is one here, and I hope somebody will make it available. And I'll ask them to give us their take individually to each one of the questions that I just posed now. And the first one of the panelists, will be Ms. Claire Melamed, Director of Growth, Poverty, and Inequality at the Overseas Development Institute. She's the head of the Secretariat for the UN's Independent Expert Group on the Data Revolution Group, which is an independent expert advisory group set up by Secretary General Ban Ki-moon of the United Nations to make concrete recommendations on bringing the data revolution in sustainable development. This report was launched last month in November, and it made specific recommendations in 4 specific areas, that is, principles and standards, technology, innovation and analysis, capacity and resources, and leadership and governance. She is a very powerful lady, and now I give her 2 minutes. Claire?
I'll go on 3.
Go ahead.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for the invitation to be here. It's already been a fascinating day listening to so many very specific examples of really great innovations and processes that are happening on the continent. Now, I'm sitting here with 2 other members of the group to my left, Pali and Stefan. So let me try to condense the combined wisdom of them and 20 of their colleagues into 3 points, which sum up what we said in the report to the Secretary General last month. The first thing, and this is a direct answer to one of your points, is that the data revolution is already happening. It's not we're not sitting back and saying, oh, shall we have a revolution or not? It's happening out there. You know, we're already living in a world which is awash with data, where people are sending and receiving data every day, every minute of every day, where the demand for data is increasing all over the world as individuals, as governments, as companies become aware of how much their everyday decisions and the objectives that they might want to reach depend on having good data to inform those decisions. And where we're seeing a kind of breathtaking, this is one of the most exciting things about doing the report, was every day there's a new breathtaking examples of the kinds of innovations that are going on around the world as individuals, as companies, as civil society organizations and governments are responding to this revolution, which, as I say, is all around us, with a whole range of different new methods, new innovations, and new ideas. So the question is really not, is the revolution myth or real? It's happening out there. The question is, how do we respond to it? And how do we make sure that we're using the opportunities in the best way to solve the problems that we confront? There were 3 reasons that we thought action is required by governments, by international organizations, and by others to really get the best out of this revolution. The first is something that we've already heard quite a lot about today, the data gaps that exist. There are lots of things that we don't know, but we should know, and there are lots of things that are not known about particular groups of people, about particular countries, about particular types of issues. And using these opportunities that we have from the data revolution can help to fill some of these gaps. A second reason to act is inequality. if we don't act, if we don't take deliberate public sector action, then the people and the organisations who take advantage of these opportunities will be those who are best placed to do so, and inequalities will grow. One of the things that I really learned from the months spent discussing these issues with the group was the huge inequalities that are already happening particularly between public and private sectors, as it's a few companies in a few countries that are really acting to take advantage of this revolution, and in some cases decades ahead of where governments and civil society organisations are at in terms of realising the opportunities and benefits that can come. And thirdly, there are risks here. Like any revolution, this does not come free of any risks and dangers. There is a risk that people can be harmed by some of these new opportunities, as there are risks to privacy, there are risks to human rights, and so on. And if we don't act, and if those institutions which act in the public's interest don't act, then there is a danger that we will see harm as well as benefit from this revolution. So we felt there is a revolution, there's a clear reason to act, and as already been said, there are 4 specific areas for action, which I'm sure we'll talk about later on.
Thank you, Claire. And oh, by the way, somebody sent me a message right now telling me that I forgot to mention my name. It's not out of modesty that I tell you that my name is Generali Ulimwengu. I'm in Dar es Salaam. My address you can get from any policeman on the streets of Dar es Salaam anytime. Then we have Mr. Pali Lehosla. I've been told that this is the man who crunches numbers in South Africa 24 hours, 24/7. He sleeps with his mobile phone, iPad, laptop, PC, and other gadgets, and his wife is not complaining either. He's the Statistician General of South Africa, and has been described as a man who never walks away from a problem. He'll follow it, he'll harass that problem, he'll follow that number up to the last digit until he gets the problem solved in numerical terms. And then he goes on to interpret that in language that even I can understand. Pali.
Thank you very much. I don't want to say mwalimu, but if I talk to a Tanzanian, I have to say mwalimu. You know, when I was running a survey about when people decide when to plant or to plow, and this was amongst women whose husbands were labor migrants, it will be answers like when it rains, when the plants flower, or when my husband tells me to do so. Now that part of when my husband tells me to do so would mean that there'll be a letter sent, a letter coming back, and then some discussions around this, and then only then will the person start plowing, the wife will start plowing. By that time it's dry, the rains are gone. For me, that SMS says, it's rained, we want to plant and plow, and the husband says, go ahead through an SMS. That's a data revolution. So looking at this, going ahead for ourselves as statisticians, in our corners working on statistics, we always have to remember that it is not about the statistics themselves, but it is about people, planet, and possibilities. And that's what this revolution should inspire future generations, that the world that is different to the one that we have currently is within their reach, and of course, our behaviors and so on should change to capture that world. And I think it is quite possible. So thanks.
Thank you very much, Pali. The next panelist will be Bill Anderson, who is a true global citizen. He is South African. He lives in the UK. He works a lot with East Africans in this data area. Bill Anderson is from Development Initiatives, and he can be said to represent the development development community. He is an information architect working with development initiatives in the UK and East Africa. His work focuses on what the data revolution should look like at the subnational level, in particular, joining up data to produce usable information for local decision making. He's also the technical lead for the International Aid Transparency Initiative and is involved in a number of projects aimed at improving global data standards. Bill, please.
For me, the issue is not where we've got to in the data revolution, but rather, can we afford not to be involved in this revolution? If I can just highlight two points. The MDGs and the SDGs compare countries, but ministries of health and education and agriculture, if they need data to operationalize their priorities, they need data about districts, about subnational data. And as I'm fortunate to be working on a project within a couple of rural districts in Uganda, trying to turn data into information for district officials, what they need is sub-district data. They need information about the parishes and sub-counties to compare health budgets against clinic performances and so on. So that without this disaggregated data, and without the drive to realize the importance of that as opposed to just global statistics, we are not going to make progress in terms of development. The second issue then I would just like to highlight is the issue of administrative data. In Uganda, maternal mortality is measured by survey. There is a new civil registration system that is being developed. It is not functional yet. Hopefully in the next 5 years it might well become functional. What happens at that point in time, once with the MDGs baselines following into the SDG baselines, with data that is perhaps questionable given the amount of protests from women in Uganda about maternal mortality, that suddenly if you get real data from an administrative system, how are statisticians then going to deal with their pretty graphs on how maternal mortality is being saved at the moment?
Thank you very much, Bill. Now we move to another, hello? Now we move to another panelist, another lady, Nena Nwakanma, who is Africa Regional Coordinator for the WWW Foundation, that is the World Wide Web Foundation, where she supports work on the Alliance for Affordable Internet and the Web We Want. Nena is a dynamic lady, organizer, activist whose long list of achievements we cannot begin to list here. She is co-founder of the Free Software and Open Source Foundation for Africa, which she also co-chairs and is former board member of the Open Source Initiative and co-founder of the Africa Network of Information Society Actors and the African Civil Society for the Information Society, which she serves on. She's also the Vice President of the Digital Solidarity Fund at Web Foundation. Nena, please.
Good evening. Please forget everything Generali has said. My name is Nena. And the point I want you to take home from here as statistician is that I'll be 40 next year. I'm a Nigerian living in Cote d'Ivoire, and I've lived in 5 other African countries, and not for once in my life have I been taken into consideration during a census. I have never been counted in any country in Africa. Having said that, I want to ask a few questions to us who are seated here. As the World Wide Web Foundation, we engage in data as a means for social justice. We engage in data for the people part of it. My first question will be, who is empowered by data revolution? The statistics you produce, to where does it go? Who benefits? Whose life, whose work is made better by data revolution or data in its simple form? How do people every day gain from data? Is it translated into knowledge? And is that knowledge translated into well-being? How does data flow from New York to my village? How does it flow? Did you know that people are using invisibility as a resistance? I don't want to be counted. I don't want my family to be counted, and nobody in my village will be counted. People are using invisibility as a form of political resistance. Did you know that? Who owns the data? To who does the legacy of data revolution belong? Is it to the people, or to the government, or to the institutions? Why did you put the report on copyright? Why? Why should public data be put on the copyright? Why not openness even in the basic things? Why should we use taxpayers' money to generate data and then lock up the data? Of what use is it that statistics generated for the people cannot legally be given to the people? How does it translate into good governance? Where does data come from, and where does it go? Who are the other people interested? Who is using it? Once again, my name is Nenna. I come from the internet. I'll be 40 next year, and I still have not been counted. Okay, quick one. My Cote d'Ivoire director is here, and this year we lived the situation in Cote d'Ivoire, in which the questions that I've asked here were given a political coloration. You know what you do when you gather data, in which the government says there will be data agencies who will pass by your house. They will wear a kind of uniform. Please welcome them. And now someone says, this data gathering effort is done by XYZ party. And if you see them, flog them, pour hot water on them. Don't let yourself be counted by these people. And those who understand that message that way, drive away the census people. So you go to a particular zone where you know there are people living there and the figures are zero, because the people say, we don't want to be associated with this government. Whether they are protesting about the president himself, whether they are protesting about the president's party, whether they are protesting generally about bad governance, I don't know what it is they are resisting against. But they said, I don't want my existence to be useful to some other person. And those are the things we need to think about, that people see data activities as something that is infringing on them instead of something that will bring me benefit. And that's where I kicked off with the question, who gets the benefit? So for this time around, I actually sat at home and I'm like, they are going to count me this time. And I kept asking, when are they going to come around? I didn't even see them. So is it possible that a census will happen and those who are waiting to be counted will not be counted? So next time anyone tells me there's going to be a census, I will be like, oh, forget it. Okay? So my idea here is that if we do not manage the messaging, if we do not sell the package, if you do not speak to me, if data flow does not get to me, if it does not in any way contribute to good governance, if it does not contribute to my benefit, I will tell myself it is politics and I don't want to be part of it. And that is one of the risks that we run as Africa in data revolution.
Thank you very much. Then we have Zakaria Chiliswa. He is from Kenya. He is a program manager at Jesuit Hakimani Center in Nairobi. Since 2012, he has been a lead researcher on emerging impacts on open data research projects in Kenya, focusing on how open data is in the city service delivery and citizen engagement in the same. He has research interests in the open governance, communication for development, and public policy. He has advanced, no, that is enough. But he is also a very prominent former journalist in Nairobi with the Nation group of newspapers. Zakaria, you're welcome.
Thank you, Generally, for your introduction. Now, Nina has asked very serious questions, particularly on the issues of data. And myself, I come from a movement of open data. What do we mean by open data? Data that is publicly available, that anyone can use, and the only restriction that is there is only to make an attribution, that we do not have to sell that data. Now, when you look at our countries, there's so much data that each and every public institution is generating, but that data is somehow, as Nina said, locked up somewhere in some cells that you have to actually buy. Like, I was surprised that for some time, when our census report was released, it was released in 4 volumes. And one volume was going for about 4,000 Kenyan shillings. Now, and you needed to buy all the 4 volumes to have the entire set of data that has been used, has been produced by the government, national government census bureau. Now, the question I was asking, if organizations particularly and journalists who are doing stories on development, and they would like to use this data that has been collected throughout the entire country, they would want to use that data for stories. Now, you need these journalists to buy 1 volume for 4,000 Kenyan shillings. This is about $30 or $40 for you to get the entire volume. And it's printed. You can't get it in soft copy. Now, the question we need to be asking ourselves is this: what kind of data do people need to engage with the government, to engage with the public institution? This is the question that is so critical. In the last, at least from the last about 8 or so years, we've seen a very big movement of opening up portals, the open data portals. A number of countries in Africa have done so. But if you go to those portals, you get very old statistics, very old data. Someone is giving you a financial report of 5 years ago. How are you supposed to use that data to engage with, to look for issues of corruption, for instance? If money has been misappropriated, of what value will be accounts of 5 years ago to the public? Now, I need this data in real time so that I can engage with the public, with decision makers. The other question is the question of access. The formats in which this data is published. If you publish a report in 100 pages or 200 pages to an ordinary journalist working on the street, they will not have time to read that report to come up with something for a 300 story. Generally, as a journalist, he knows that. If you give him a big volume of research, he's likely to use it maybe after 3 or 4 weeks. Now, we wanted this story to come out. Dozie was speaking here saying that African Union has had not good relationship with the journalists. Perhaps it's the way you publish your stories that makes it difficult for people to crunch these numbers that you are giving. The other thing is the access points. Now, if we publish our reports and put them on a portal, what is the reality in Africa? How many people have access to computers, have access to electricity, and have access to internet? How many people do we have in Africa who can access these platforms? Now, when we publish our report in 100 gigabytes and put it on a portal, who has enough internet resources to get this data? So that question again we need to address, the question of access points. Now, statistics is just one of the data that we are talking about. We have the financial accounts banks produce every single day. How many of us have capacity to really go through those statistics? And there's one page in the newspaper, if those who read newspaper, many of us actually don't read. The one that banks publish their financial statements. These are banks that we bank our money, but many of us actually don't go there to look at who is borrowing from that bank. Why are the interest rates high? No one answers those questions. And then, of course, we have the data on our culture in Africa. If you go to YouTube, you'll find so many of our cultures in YouTube. Who is using that data? You find that many companies are now using private data for commercial purposes. They're using them for advertisement. When you go to Google, when you go to Yahoo, when you go to Facebook, we are very happy we say Africa is a youthful continent. But then where are these people? Many of the young people are on social media. And they're publishing so much information there that private companies are using for business. How protected, which legal frameworks do we have in place to protect the identities of the people who have their data, their biodata online?
Thank you, Zakaria.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our last panelist is not the least, but he's just it's chronological. I don't know whether it's alphabetical or whatever, but he comes in last. He brings up the rears, as we say. And his name is Stefan Schweinfecht. He says I should not tell you what it means, Schweinfecht. But his name was so funny in Germany, he had to emigrate to New York, where they have funny names like Bloomberg and things like that, you know. And nobody raised an eyebrow. Schweinfecht actually means, I will tell you, it means pig festival. I don't know what they're doing there. He's director of the UN Statistics Division, and he'll be representing the views of the Committee of Experts of the Global Geospatial Information Management. He has been described as one who enjoys working on highly accurate statistical forecasts for what is going to be happening in 10 years' time. So he can tell you what is going to happen in 2024. Be prepared. In a world in a state of constant change, but he keeps abreast of those changes even before they happen. His work in the Statistics Division in the United Nations is committed to the advancement of the global statistical system. Stefan, bitte.
Thank you very much, and I told you I will have to sue you if you tell somebody what my name means. And I wanted to make one other remark. Everything bad that was said about Pali and his telephones is true, because he has called me in the middle of the night, so he must be sleeping with his phones. So three quick points: moment of huge opportunity, geography, and let's do it together. So number one, moment of huge opportunity. There was a moment when I was telling people that I was a statistician, they would immediately change the conversation topic on me. And now then I was reading in the New York Times when it said that statisticians are now among the top 10 sexiest professions. So as I'm still struggling with my new status as a sex symbol, as the director of the UN Statistics Division, I have to recognize this is a really huge moment of opportunity. Statistics data, it's in everybody's mouth, and we are talking about it, and not only about numbers, a much larger concept of data and information. It comes at a moment where we are looking at development agendas, and so this is really the now or never moment for all of us, and we need to live up to these demands of the data revolution. Second point, geography. I'm actually replacing Vanessa Lawrence, who was supposed to be here and talk about geography. And we had a meeting of cartographers in geography and location just next door. And when we said we will come over to the statisticians to talk about the data revolution, somebody said, oh, we cartographers had the data revolution years ago. I mean, what did they mean? In cartography, it's much more IT intensive. There is much more experience already to work with the private sector. And so these are new partnerships that we need to explore. I mean, we need to work together and embrace these new opportunities that are coming from for all of us. And this is the same challenge for all professional communities. I always say here in Africa, the big challenge is to register the two most precious assets that you have in Africa, land and your people. Civil registration, land registration. You do that in the next couple of years, you will be a huge step forward. My third point, together. There has never been a revolution where there is one lonely guy with a gun running around in a field. That's not a revolution. Or 10 guys running off in 10 different directions. That's also not a revolution. A revolution is about marching together. And so that means we need to join forces. And that means the statisticians with the geographers. And that means the official statisticians with international organizations, with the private sector, with academia, and everybody, the news media. We have to march together. And in particular also the various layers from the local to the national to the regional and to the global. And to answer your question, I don't want any data to flow from New York to your village. I want the data to flow from your village to New York. And in order for that to really happen, we need a chain of trust and quality. And that's what we really need to work on, because you described very eloquently why there may be problems with your data flow from the village to New York. But that's what I really want for the future. Thank you.
You surely must agree with me that this is a fantastic panel that I've collected here. That speaks to my genius, because I brought them all here, from Nairobi, from New York, from wherever, from Pretoria. And let's give them a round of applause, first of all. I know there is no time, there is no material time for us to be able to interrogate everything that they have told us. We have dinner, graciously given by the Tunisian minister this evening. You have time to buttonhole them and ask them a few questions and so on and so forth. For the time being, we have something like 30 minutes only for us to raise concerns here and there in 1-minute interventions, or less than 1 minute. Let's start here, please. Identify yourself very briefly and say what you want to say. The microphone. Le microphone ambulant. Le microphone.
Merci, monsieur le maître de cérémonie. Je voudrais, au nom de tous mes collègues, vous féliciter, vous remercier d'avoir réuni toutes ces personnalités autour de cette problématique. Cette problématique, comme je dis toujours, si vous n'entrez pas dans un bateau, les vagues que le bateau fait peuvent vous emporter. Alors, vous voyez, les statisticiens, la communauté statistique mondiale a toujours salué les progrès en matière d'éthique. Parce que pour les anciens comme nous, nous calculions avec la règle à calculer. Nous avons vu passer des générations de méthodes de calcul, de la machine à calculer. On est passé aux cartes à perforer. Et puis on est arrivé aujourd'hui aux ordinateurs et puis aux petits outils qu'on a dans la main pour avancer. Donc le progrès d'éthique est salutaire pour la science statistique. Et on ne pourrait pas être développé si ces progrès n'étaient pas faits. Mais, il se passe quelque chose, c'est toutes ces masses de données qui sont produites avec l'utilisation de ces outils. Je dis bien masse de données. Si on ne fait pas la différence entre ces masses de données et des données statistiques qui sont bien définies dans nos cours élémentaires en statistique, on va faire du making pot, on ne saura pas de quoi on parle et on va mélanger tout. Alors j'en parle parce que je suis en train d'expérimenter ça en Côte d'Ivoire. Vous savez très bien qu'Orange est sur le dossier. Nous avons fait à Abidjan la demande de transport de la population par nos méthodes d'enquête habituelles. Échantillons, aréolaires, interroger les ménages. Et puis, de l'autre côté, Orange a mis des étudiants pour faire le même travail à partir des relevés de mouvements des portables. Parce que quand vous déplacez votre portable, même si vous n'avez pas communiqué, on peut tracer sa mobilité.
Vous avez dépassé votre minute, monsieur.
Non, la question est tellement importante que...
Oui, je sais, mais on a tellement de questions qui sont importantes.
Alors, monsieur, ce que je veux dire, c'est que...
Nous risquons de passer la nuit ici sans...
Non, vous permettez. Il faut qu'on comprenne que les statisticiens doivent entrer dans ce système, mais avec leur science. Et transformer ces masses de données qui ne sont pas des données statistiques, les rendre exploitables à des fins statistiques. Si ce n'est pas fait, ce n'est pas bon.
D'accord. Je vous remercie vraiment, sincèrement. Prochainement, c'est vous, madame.
Ok. Bien, je suis Rosine Konla Azamene, je suis journaliste à la RTS à Yaoundé au Cameroun. C'est vrai qu'on devait avoir normalement une conférence de presse qui n'a pas eu lieu, mais je pense que ça également, c'est le cadre pour nous les journalistes de poser un certain nombre de préoccupations. Je voudrais dire déjà que j'ai été particulièrement touchée par le témoignage de Nina. Parce que Nina, en fait, est en train de poser la question que nous autres aurions dû poser. C'est vrai qu'elle est panéliste, mais elle nous dit qu'elle n'a jamais été recensée. Je pense qu'au lieu de rire, comme j'ai vu les gens rire dans la salle, normalement on devait en pleurer. Ou alors, je ne sais pas si le rire, c'est un symbole de la honte pour nous-mêmes. Ça veut dire que l'Afrique a mal à sa statistique. Elle pose un certain nombre de questions. Où vont ces données, les données qui sont récoltées, qui sont présentées par les statisticiens? Qui en tire profit? Je pense qu'aujourd'hui, normalement, chaque statisticien ou chaque Africain devrait se poser la question. Et elle demande quel est même l'impact sur les publications. Je pense que ces préoccupations sont également les nôtres. Et maintenant, si je voudrais m'arrêter sur le thème de ce comité qui est agriculture et sécurité alimentaire en Afrique, il y a un constat qui a été posé pendant les discussions. C'est que rares sont les pays africains qui produisent aujourd'hui des informations ou des chiffres de qualité. Ça veut dire qu'il y a encore un problème de crédibilité de nos chiffres. D'où viennent ces chiffres? Déjà, ils sont rares. Rares sont les pays qui produisent, qui mettent sur la table des produits de qualité. Aujourd'hui, on voudrait expérimenter. Je ne sais pas si c'est une nouvelle expérimentation, mais j'ai écouté tout à l'heure pendant les débats, on parle maintenant de c'est Eurostat? C'est Eurostat, oui. Tout à l'heure, j'écoutais dans les... J'ai suivi le panel. On parle maintenant d'Eurostat. Je voudrais savoir, est-ce que c'est maintenant avec Eurostat que l'Afrique doit travailler? C'est une nouvelle expérimentation. Est-ce qu'on veut apprendre d'eux? Ou alors on attend que Eurostat vienne encore financer la statistique en Afrique? Je voudrais quand même que nous, les Africains, qu'on n'oublie pas que généralement, celui qui finance est celui qui oriente, et celui qui oriente, c'est celui-là qui contrôle. Je vous remercie.
Je vous remercie, madame. I don't know where that one is addressed. Is it to Pali or to... not now. Just keep it in mind as we go around the room. This side, I see a hand here, madam. She's from Tanzania. Yeah. Well, karibu.
Thank you, Chair. Data revolution is happening now. It is true. We statisticians in the continent, we have nothing to do rather than to join hands. Now, leveraging science, technology, and innovation is very important. Involvement of various stakeholders is very important, starting with mass media. That will convey really what we are producing to our policymakers, like Member of Parliament, like my colleague from Uganda has just said. And sometimes change of mind of our stakeholders. Really, I'm saying this because once we produce our numbers, somebody say, oh, this is not true, this is like this. If it's not true now, come up with your number. So we need to change our mindset. We statisticians at the continent, we need to ensure the quality of the information that we are producing, just like what Stefan has just said, quality of the statistics that we are producing so that it convinces our users that what we are producing is correct. It informed decision making is where now we need to go if really we have to respond to 2015 post-development agenda and call upon this data revolution to be full swing in the African continent. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chua. Behind there, Mademoiselle derrière.
I can use this? Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. It should be obvious that fundamentally the aim of any development objective or structure is the ultimate improvement in the living standard of
briefly yes. Introduce yourself.
Okay. Professor Godwin Chukwudumwaobi, Research Director, Quantitative Economic Research, Bureau, Nigeria, and Scientific Committee member of the African Union Commission. Fundamentally, the aim of any development objective or structure is improvement in the living standard. In that respect, the UN post-2015 MDG, which aims at reviving the previous MDG, once started revolution. And we have seen this segment and direction of that revolution. I want to state there are two major segments of that revolution. And one is taking proper direction, and I'm happy with what is happening today. And that aspect is the geospatial, geography that has been integrated. That's one segment. But one segment is silent. The geospatial, geographical aspect can only count materials, can only identify resources, material resources. The human resources is silent. And we need the second segment, which is biometric. The biometric segment will enable us to identify the dynamics of human population. If we believe in social security system and social security scheme, then the issue that the lady raised will be over, where it is mandatory that every citizen have social security number. It's not a choice of political party. It's mandatory for government to plan to know the demographic transition in that country and various dimensions of population. So we need a marriage between statistics and biometrics, not just statistics and geography, so that it will be complete in counting material resources and human resources. When we do that, then we'll be able to achieve the ultimate goal of the forthcoming post-2015, which is sustainable development goals, of which I'm one of the panel members in presenting the African perspectives on the post-2015 MG. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Let's come back. No, let's go there, in the middle there.
Thank you. Bon, je pense qu'en Afrique, on a déjà commencé quelque temps en data revolution. Par exemple, au Cap-Vert, on a réalisé le premier recensement digital du continent africain en 2010.
Présentez-vous d'abord.
Je suis Antonio Duarte, je suis le président de l'Institut national de la statistique du Cap-Vert. De Cap-Vert, maintenant. Donc, comme on a dit, on a fait le premier recensement digital du continent africain. Donc, je pense que ça, c'est déjà un data revolution. Sur la question de Madame Nina, qu'elle a posée, je pense qu'elle a interpellé même le DG de Côte d'Ivoire, pour dire que quand on fait un recensement et qu'on va recenser un logement, et si on trouve pas de personnes à la maison, et là, on a des méthodologies qui nous permettent d'estimer. Et pendant la duration de on ne trouve pas les personnes à la maison pendant la duration de la collecte, et au dernier jour de recensement, on peut demander les voisins, par exemple, combien de personnes habitent à la maison, et c'est une manière de compter la population. C'est vrai qu'on aura seulement les numéros, peut-être, oui, les numéros et les sexes, on n'aura pas les autres informations de l'individu et aussi de les ménages. On perd les informations, mais on peut compter. Peut-être, je ne sais pas quel est le cas de Madagascar, mais je pense que peut-être vous êtes recensé et vous ne savez pas que Côte d'Ivoire a fait votre recensement. OK, merci.
Alors, l'année dernière, vous étiez en Afrique du Sud et j'ai eu la chance de participer à vos travaux. Et là-bas, il a été ressorti qu'il fallait que l'Afrique ait enfin ses propres données statistiques. Un an après, on se retrouve ici. Il y a eu des résolutions qui ont été prises. Et un an après, c'est encore le même cri de cœur. Il faut que l'Afrique ait ses propres données statistiques. Alors, vous, en tant que des personnes qui travaillaient sur des chiffres, donc qui prévoyaient même ce qui va arriver en 2024, alors j'aimerais savoir quand est-ce que l'Afrique va enfin avoir ses propres données statistiques. Et comment est-ce que vous allez vous y prendre alors que vous êtes ici en train de déplorer le fait que la statistique africaine n'a même pas encore pris le train de la modernité, de la révolution numérique. Comment est-ce que vous comptez vous y prendre pour contribuer à l'agriculture et la sécurité alimentaire en Afrique? Merci.
Merci, madame.
Yeah, my name is Professor Emmanuel Angosio Chukuma. I'm a consultant. The data revolution, I think, was in the context of the post-2015 development goals, and which requires a certain orientation in terms of addressing the sustainable development goals. And the implication we need to be informed requires that the national development strategies of the different countries have to change orientation so that you have a statistical revolution to be able to support the programs of this type of new orientation to be able to address the sustainable development goals. So I'd like to get some comment from the panelists on how this can be addressed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll have 4 more interventions and then we shall come back to the panel for responses and reactions. I'll start with you, sir.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Risenga Madulega. I'm a Deputy Director General at Statistics South Africa. I think as Africans, we need to deal with what Isaiah Berlin calls a sense of reality. There is a digital divide on the continent. Chair, it means that a digital divide in the data revolution will make us consumers than owners and drivers of our own destiny. And like the industrial revolution, as well as the transport revolution and others that have left us behind, the risks of us being left behind, even as we seek to take charge, is very real. So I think we need to have to develop a sense of discriminating what matters from the rest, and be able to say that if it's a revolution, and I think Stefan touches on it, that is not 1 or 2 soldiers running down the street. It means that we have to accept that we will skip certain stages in the evolutionary processes of technology, as well as in the evolutionary processes of the culture that we have in the society, to be able to catch up. Otherwise, we will always be lagging behind, and we will tend to be consumers in the end. And I think it's worrying that in any revolution, if we are left behind, it will spell the doom in terms of the development as an equal player in the world stage. Thank you.
Thank you. And they say this revolution will not be televised. You'd better come out on the streets. Yes, you, sir.
Thank you very much. I'm Murangwa Yusuf. I'm the Director General of Statistics Rwanda. Mine is on communication. There is one fact: statisticians, we are not communicating well. But at the same time, I don't want us to be hard on ourselves as statisticians. Communication is very complicated. And in fact, I don't think there's any other profession, apart from communicators, who communicate well. Look at doctors, they don't communicate well. Look at engineers, they don't communicate well. But that doesn't stop us from trying to communicate well. So I think we should realize that communication is complicated. We should invest in communication. We should partner with the experts in communication. And we want the partners in communication to be our friends. In the morning, there was a saying that journalists are our friends. It would not be useful or constructive to have communicators criticizing statisticians for not communicating. They should come our way, and we should go their way, and we meet somewhere in between, and then we take the message across. It's a very complicated message. I'll give an example. Our friend was talking about not being counted. Statisticians, we know, in the censuses, we have omissions. And when you're disseminating a census, a statistics office, a good statistics office, should be able to communicate to everyone that there is an omission, so that people should know that there is an omission. But we do something about it. And in fact, some people are counted and they don't know that they are counted. All these things we have to explain, and they should be very clear to everyone. But most importantly, statistics is not accounts. We don't have to count each and everything and make sure we balance everything left and right. All these things people should know. It's an estimation, the best estimation possible that we can do. If we communicate well, would resolve so many issues. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. That means I'll never be jobless. I'm available, ladies and gentlemen. Anytime you want me to communicate for you, I'm ready. I'm here. As well as Zakaria here and the two ladies who are also journalists here. Now, any lady, I want to see a lady. I want to hear a lady. And you're improperly dressed. No more ladies. Okay, you tried very hard.
Merci beaucoup. J'ai plaidé pour avoir l'affaire. Bien. Je vais juste donner une citation qui répondra plus ou moins à qui appartiennent les données. Et puisqu'il s'agit d'une révolution, permettez-moi de citer Maximilien de Robespierre dans son discours à la Convention nationale sur les subsistances le 2 décembre 1792. Voilà ce qu'il disait à propos des données qui corrobore aussi ici avec notre thème. Tout homme n'a pas le droit d'entasser du blé quand son semblable meurt de faim. Tout ce qui est nécessaire à l'existence de la vie des hommes appartient à la société. Je vous remercie.
Thank you very much. But eventually he went to the guillotine, no? They eventually chopped off his head for those words, maybe. The last one, I wish it would be a lady, please. Okay. Anybody? Where's, okay, the lady there, please. And that will be our last intervention.
Thank you, Chair. I think you chose me because you know I'm from Tanzania.
I didn't even know that.
Okay, my name is Paulina Chiwangu. I work with United Nations Women. I live in Uganda, but I'm from Tanzania. I just want to congratulate my brother, General Ulimwengu. I was worried all day. You know, I've been listening from one presenter to the other, but I didn't feel the gender balance. But at least this afternoon, there is some hope. And I just want to say, yes, statisticians have declared this a revolution, and our colleague from United Nations Statistics Division in New York have told us, this revolution, nobody is going alone. We have to go together as a team. So let's not forget gender issues. Let's not leave behind gender issues. Because in statistics, it's really important to have gender issues addressed in the beginning. I remember this morning somebody said, yes, the AU have declared next year as a year of women empowerment. Let's not wait until next year. Let's start now. So it's just a comment, not a question.
Karibu sana. That's a lady in a hurry. You know, next year is only 1.5 months away. No, half a month away. But she's already in a hurry to do something. In these 2 weeks remaining before you get to the next year, let's do something. And we can start here in Tunis and do something, and then see what the 2 weeks coming between now and the 1st of January can bring us. Now, after these interventions from the audience, I come back to the panel. A minute each. Zakaria.
I want to respond to 3 things that were asked. One was about the orientation, and this actually requires literacy, and that's why we're talking about data literacy, that the statisticians need to be educated, the public need to be educated, and journalists and every other stakeholder about data, because we have to transform ourselves from the language of statistics to the language of data, and what does it mean to the people. The second is the question my brother raised about the reality of the digital divide. Yes, when we look at our populations, most of them are still not connected to the network. The fiber optics are not yet in our cities, and if they are there, they are still far, they are not reachable by majority of the population. So how do we ensure data literacy when people are not connected to these crucial networks? Then the second is a question of communication. Yes, now this is about building the infrastructure for data, and particularly open data. How are our institutions, particularly government, structured so that people can access data? Many, we still do our things in the traditional way when we actually in the digital era. How do we structure our structures within our institution? And then second is investing in data journalism. It's a new thing which many people are talking about. More and more journalists will be waiting for press statements, when actually we have published reports that can be made publicly available. And I was actually hoping that most of the papers that are going around here could be put on online. Many of the people who are here have access to online. Why do we have to publish things in the paper and then give them around to the people?
Thank you.
So this is crucial, that we have to invest in data journalism, and African Union can actually lead this.
Thank you, Zakaria. Nina?
Thank you. I want to come back again and say that it is very important that we link data revolution to development. So data revolution in Africa for me will be African development powered by data. Having said that, I would like to speak to MDAs, ministries, departments, and agencies. Good governance is what citizens are looking, that's the greatest benefit that citizens can get from the data revolution, in which we are informed about what government is all about, what it is doing, and how it is doing it. Unfortunately, government cannot force citizens. That is not good governance. That is why people are talking about communication. We need to explain that this thing we are doing is for all of us. This is how government will gain from it. This is how families will gain from it. This is how the industry will gain from it. Finally, statistics is only one part of the data and information ecosystem. In Africa, the fastest growing technology is mobile. And most of us have registered our mobile numbers. Who manages this huge chunk of data? There is a lot of other people who are generating data that are interesting to the everyday person. What are we doing to get all of this communicated to us? Finally, as Zach has said, we don't crunch numbers, unfortunately. I'm from the part of Nigeria called Igbo. If you ask us to do 5 times 5 minus 5, that's going to be difficult statistics. But if you put money to it, I can tell you that 5 times 5 naira is 25 naira minus 5 naira, that is 20 naira.
We have taken it off copyright. So yeah, many things, you know, were casualties of the very short time frame. But anyway, I hope we've sorted that one out. I think what a lot of the questions have pointed out, to my mind, is what data can do and what data can't do. To some extent, the limits of data are the limits of the systems that we have. If people don't trust governments, then they won't want a census. If we live in a society where women are systematically discriminated against, then our gender data will be poor. And I think while to some extent it's all of our responsibility as, you know, as people with technical skills and people who want to improve the world to try to use those technical skills and the relationships that we have to see where data can help to overcome some of those systematic mistrust and inequalities and failures of systems that we face. We also have to accept that there are going to be limits to what the data revolution can do, and there's a point in which it segues into just the revolution, which is a different thing entirely.
Thank you, Pali.
Yes, I think you shared 2 points to make. The one is...
There's also a question I directed at you much earlier that came from the floor.
Well, I didn't have my laptop and iPad connected to myself.
Okay.
If you can remind me the question, Chair.
Just go ahead.
Yes, I think on the question of data, there are 2 things to understand. There is a commons part of it, which is that which we own together. There is the other property that it is non-rival. And the non-rival property is an important property because it defeats the logic of scarcity. The more we have of it, the more it is used, the further we push the price down. And its ability to be in the hands of individuals and individuals make decisions. Obviously, the capability to reason with the facts at hand is what we need. Nothing democratizes as is the ability to manage data. So it is an instrument towards driving democracies. So the technology that makes it possible to have it on ourselves and produce it ensures that we have democracy. It is not a coincidence that we have all these uprisings using the technology. It's because people can reason, can organize, and it's a new community of governance. So the revolution is there, and it is a commons, but it is a commons with a special property of non-rivalry and of abundance. The second point that I thought I was going to make is really it will be useful when it is used. When it's not used, obviously it will be useless. So use is central to a data revolution. And use is dependent on access, and access is dependent on the ability to manage and manipulate. So, Chair, I've forgotten the second question, but...
it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Thank you. And Abir?
I'd just like to say something about civil society, because I think the last thing we need is to leave this room to think that the data revolution is about us and them, about civil society competing against government. There's a lot of bad data around. There's a lot of missing data around. There's a huge lack in human capacity. There's a huge lack in infrastructural investment. There is just not enough money going around now, and by July next year, when the financing for development meetings take place, there will still not be enough money. We've already moved, I think, from the concept of a national statistics office being responsible for this to a national statistics system. What we need to do in a data revolution is now build an inclusive national statistics system, so that NSOs, with all the line ministries, with the private sector, with academia, and with civil society, take joint responsibility for the collection, the analyzing, and distribution of data and information. I think this is one of the key things that that has to take a leapfrog, to take a step forward in terms of how we're going to meet the huge tasks that exist.
Thank you, Stefan.
Thank you, and of course I couldn't agree more with what you've just said. I'm afraid you want my salary because you're making the plea from a statistics office perspective now. Now, thank you for this wonderful, rich discussion. I think you heard so many different things. You heard the official statisticians making a plea that we be respected for all the hard and quality work that we have been doing over all the years. You heard the journalists rightfully holding us accountable and saying what's happening, where are the data going, what are we doing with the data. You heard the scientists asking for open data. They say the worst situation is if we know that there are data somewhere and we can't get access to them. You heard the passionate sector specialists arguing for their particular areas, whether it be women or biometrics or something. So I think it was a wonderful debate, and you can also see that even during the debate we started already answering each other, which is always proving the dangerous effects of communication. If we keep talking to each other, we may end up understanding each other. And I'm a statistician at the end of the day, so I need to talk as a statistician and to my sisters and brothers as statisticians. This is not us versus them. This is not old data versus new data. And so the mere fact that Nina begs to be counted, this is an official statistical process, shows that she doesn't really dislike statisticians. And so the mere fact that the journalist said we want data from Africa for Africa shows we want to produce data here. And so we come to the point that you just mentioned, it's all about capacity, capacity, capacity. Capacity to produce data, capacity to produce old types of data, capacity to produce new types of data and put them intelligently together, and capacity to use the data efficiently that we produce, because as Pali rightly said, data that are just sitting somewhere, they are not really useful. So it's not a bad time to be a statistician.
The only thing that I forgot to raise was the question on gender. In fact, in this whole issue around data revolution, we have a gender dimension to it, and quite a number of people, quite a huge, there's a huge drive towards making sure that there is a gender dimension in the data revolution and everywhere else, because excluding 52% of the population of the world, or discriminating against a proportion of that population, it's an injustice. I'll happen to be in New York on Monday the 15th. We'll be with Hillary Clinton and Bloomberg, the mayor of New York, driving this issue around gender. And they call it Data 2X, but they are partnering with the Civil Registration and Vital Statistics to ensure that gender is embedded as a matter of necessity. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Let's give a round of applause to my panelists. And my last word will be that there is context to everything. Statistics must be dealt with in a given context. For instance, we have seen it here, we've heard it here, that when people don't trust their government, they will not give the correct answers. They will even kick out the enumerators who are coming to ask them questions. If they don't trust their government, they will not tell you they have an Ebola patient in their house. If they don't trust their government, they will not tell you how many children need polio vaccination. And they will kill the polio vaccination agents. Because every statistic has some use that it has to be put to. The apartheid regime had statistics. How to keep the black people in their place, in the Bantustans. The Nazi administration in Germany had statistics. How many Jews had to be sent to the gas chambers? Every administration has something to do with statistical use for good or for evil. It is in the general context of the political climate in a given polity that will determine how people respond to your desire to have their statistics, where they will tell you the number of children they have. Unfortunately, we still have people who believe that if you count your children, they will die. This is the reality. And then you have the misuse of those statistics. Sometimes, as one professor put it, you want to see statistics being used as light. But a drunk on the street, if you see him leaning on a lamppost, it's not for lighting, it's for support, so that he doesn't fall down, because he's too drunk. I thank you very much for this contribution, and you can applaud yourselves. We come to the end of this session, and I pass on the microphone to Dozier, who has a number of announcements to make. Karibu. You're welcome.
Thank you. Can we put our hands together for Generally, the communicator here? Good. And before I make any announcements, if you think this session has been useful, can you put your hands together? Let me see how many people. Okay, good. Can you please do me a favor? I don't want to lose my job. I promised my boss that I'm going to do a questionnaire immediately after this session, but I forgot to print the questionnaire. So I'll ask you to do me a favor. I'll ask you the question I just write, just 2 questions. I write it on paper and then give it to us tomorrow morning. 1, how did you find this session useful? Just a little sentence says how you found this session. And 2, do you think the data revolution is for us? That what can we do about data revolution? And then the third one, I said 2 questions, but that's 2.5. The third one is, should we have this kind of session at future sessions of the Statistical Commission for Africa? If you can just write a simple thing and leave it at the desk tomorrow morning, then I'll not lose my job. That's what I want you to do for me. And now let me thank my panelists for, at the very last minute, if you know how easy it was to convince them. We didn't have to convince them. They just all agreed to come and serve on this panel. Please help me thank them again for serving on this panel. Please give a hand for you. And now, just a very quick point. There's been a lot of talk about communication and using the media. Let me share an experience we are having in ECA. Maybe you can try it in your countries. Since 2 or 3 years ago, every time we have a meeting, in addition to inviting the participants, instead of inviting journalists to just come for the opening ceremony and go home, we invite a few journalists who will sit with us throughout the session as participants. And therefore, they start understanding what we are doing, what Zach said, so that we start meeting them and they start meeting us. And that's what I think maybe you should consider doing that in your countries. When you have events, instead of just writing a press release for them and give to them, to invite some of them who will sit with you throughout the session and be part of the debate and discussion, thereby understanding what the issues are, and you also understand what they are. And they report from inside as participants. That's what we've been doing, and some of them are here with us. There are 5 of them here who have been with us since Monday, and they'll be with us since Friday. Maybe you can consider doing that at home for that data journalism. And I thank you very much, everybody, for that. Announcements? Okay, come on, make the announcements.
Il y a une annonce. Le temps est passé, mais il y a une réunion qu'on ne peut pas rater d'organiser. Le comité africain de coordination statistique doit rester dans cette salle pour la réunion qui était prévue de 17h à 18h30. On va consacrer moins de temps. Mais, donc j'appelle l'Union africaine, la BAD, la CEA, les communautés économiques régionales, restez dans la salle. Merci.